Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on the call today. Today's conversation we've laid out here for you. We're going to first start on what we've learned and what's different today, both in Detroit and within the foundation, to kind of set the stage of how we started developing this strategy. As we've developed the strategy, we've had conversations with community members, youth, educators, and many of our previous and ongoing partners who have joined us on the call. So thanks to those who have contributed directly to the strategy. Then we're going to give an overview of the overall strategy before we dive in very deep into the economy impact area. Throughout the webinar, we're going to be taking your questions live. So if you see on the right-hand side, there's a questions section. If you write in there, we're going to try to type back to you as quickly as we can to respond to you right then and there. For questions that we receive multiple times, or those that we think that everyone could benefit from, we're going to save the last 20 minutes or so of the call to actually verbally talk through those. If you have follow-up questions from there, please keep typing them in. Anything we're not able to cover on the webinar, we'll either reply to you directly or we will also cover them on our website in a blog with the recordings of these videos. Today's presenters, we have David McGee, who is a program director here and who oversees the economy and equity impact areas for the foundation. Punita Thurman, who oversees our education work and has pieces in these portfolios. And Patty Hina-Josa, our senior program officer, is also joining us today. You'll see a slide at the end of the presentation that shows our full team of program officers, all who have helped develop the strategy and will be working with our partners as we go forward. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McGee.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. We are intrigued by your interest, and we are interested in discussing and figuring out ways that we can be collaborative in the future to improve the overall quality of life for young people across the city of Detroit. I'll start by just kind of highlighting what we've learned. What you'll see here as you all are engaged in the work is information that's familiar to you. Social, emotional, and academic development is a key component of young people's success as they continue to matriculate throughout adolescence. And our strategy as a whole is grounded in everything that we've done in the past. Many of you all, if you've received funding from us, have known us more recently for our Good Neighborhoods initiative. So those conditions and those contexts are actually what we're going to use as we move forward. So post-secondary success is dependent on academic preparation, but what's also important are those non-cognitive skills and making sure that young people can develop those skills. Another piece that we've learned is exposure is essential. So as young people continue to matriculate academically, the more we can expose them to things outside of the classroom and to the world around them, the better off that they'll be. Many foundations, moving into the next piece that we've learned, focus a lot on programs and funding programs. While programs are important, policies and practices are progress. So while you have institutions, on the ground funding direct programs, how do we make sure that the practices and the policies set by institutions are also designed in a favorable way to meet the needs of kids? Alignment is critical. All of the systems that children and families come in contact with, there needs to be some type of alignment across the board to make sure that young people have a positive set of experiences as they navigate, this world before them. Middle school. As young people continue to transition from middle school to high school, that's a pivotal moment for them, so we'll be paying close attention to that. In the Good Neighborhoods Initiative, we had a goal of a 90% high school graduation rate, but it wasn't graduation for the sake of graduation. We wanted to make sure that high school graduation is meaningful. It must be meaningful in a way where young people can connect themselves to something beyond high school that will be beneficial to their life as they continue to grow and develop, which leads us to post-secondary persistence.
Do you want to take that, or do you want to do that verbally, or do that?
Excuse us 1 second. Which takes us to post-secondary persistence. So as young people graduate from high school, we want to make sure that we can do what we can to track them and ensure that following high school, the success they have will be a good one. Unusual suspects and unlikely allies. A quick example here will be around the chronic absenteeism work that was mentioned yesterday. So if you were on the webinar yesterday, we talked a bit about chronic absenteeism. So what we mean by unusual suspects and unlikely allies, from a chronic absenteeism standpoint, one of the leading indicators of young people being chronically absent from school is actually health related, right? Related to asthma and some other things. A traditional approach to try to tackle chronic absenteeism may be to pull a roundtable together full of educators, right, or law enforcement officials. But how do we make sure that we get those unusual suspects, those unlikely allies in the room that we can hold hands with to help move outcomes for kids? And then just connecting the child-centered systems. There should not be a moment where there's a system that serves kids that is not talking to another system that also serves kids. So what we've learned is that these particular pieces are important, and this will inform our work moving forward. Reason being is that today Detroit is different. I mean, Detroit has a way with comebacks. We've emerged from the Great Depression. We've gone through bankruptcy. There's been a number of things that have people have tried to use to define Detroit. But what we're hoping to do is play a key role in helping shape Detroit and the revitalization efforts that are before us. It's an exciting time to be here in Detroit. We also value, that kids come first. Kids come first in what we do. Talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not. Youth need a voice in what it is that the future actually looks like for them, so we can kind of grow and cultivate that. I want to take a moment here just to ground everybody in data related to the Detroit youth population. So I'll just pause for a moment and give you a second to look at that. A little over 150,000 young people in the city of Detroit, 57% of them living in poverty, and 24,000 between the ages of 18 and 24 aren't in school and aren't working. So as we hope every Detroiter is connected to and thrives in the economy, our efforts moving forward will continue to be very strategic and intentional. So having been embedded in place within 6 neighborhoods for 10 years, it is important to remind ourselves of the current context today. Which leads us to an opportunity agenda for children in Detroit. Our goal is to make sure that Detroit children are prepared for and connected to opportunities in an ever-evolving economy, and that they are making significant contributions to our city's recovery. We will do this with a strategic frame around education, equity, and economy. Many of the questions we get as we roll out this frame is it another Good Neighborhoods initiative? This is not another 10-year initiative, but we think these 3 pillars or verticals of work will be enduring and long-term investments that we focus on here at the foundation. So today's webinar, this particular webinar, will take a deeper dive in the work around economy. Preparing and connecting youth to an ever-evolving economy. As Detroit continues to recover and rebuild, we want to make sure that we give them the tools and the resources that they need to participate in the economy. And this happens through a system-building approach, which really kind of have two pillars: stakeholder-aligned action and also system development and alignment. This includes employers, workforce development, professionals, higher ed partners, as well as families, schools, youth employment and youth development programs, making sure that there's a connectivity across this, which includes data sharing, capacity building, policy measures, proof points, and actually scaling what works. We want to identify those investments that matter and make sense and scale what works. So within the economy bucket, as we dive in, there's 3 strategic approaches that you'll see the foundation take beginning in 2018. One is around college and career pathways. The other is around youth employment. And then finally, financial empowerment. So I asked my colleague, Panita Thurman, to join us to talk a bit about college and career pathways.
Thanks, David. So as David was talking about the convergence of systems, so the K-12 system of schooling, and really how do this pathway, this strategic approach in particular, is focused on thinking about that in-school and out-of-school experience while kids are exposed to different careers, have access to different authentic learning experiences, and are finding themselves onto some pathway of success around post-secondary. Let me first dive into college and career models. There are a number of initiatives happening in the in-school space right now, in particular in partnership with the United Way and DPSCD. There's a number of schools that are taking on the linked learning model where they are redesigning the high school experience around career academies, using the framework of career learning to really build kids' exposure to different careers, different pathways, and making authentic learning a part of that work. In addition to the content building, obviously, as David talked about earlier, there's a huge amount of opportunity in the in-school space to also be thinking about how to build those non-cognitive skills that we know are critical for career success as well. In addition to the in-school learning, we've also identified this work around post-secondary access and support. So in the city, we have had a number of learnings over the past 10 years around what do kids need, especially first generation or kids from low-income families. What might they need in terms of access to information? How can their families be supported to think about the right pathway? What kinds of resources can be made available to them to think about how to match for a college, how to be thinking about the application process around that work. And so we are also, in addition to the in-school learning, thinking about the post-secondary access landscape and how it connects kids to whatever pathway they choose, whether that's getting into a career right after high school, waiting till community college, or a four-year degree. We think that if these two work together, we will be setting kids up successfully to pursue the pathway of their choice.
Thank you. Looking at youth employment, similar to college and career pathways, based on the Foundation's experience and research, we have found that high-quality youth employment systems focus on 5 attributes. Centralized youth enrollment, which is a single point of access for youth to enroll in the youth employment opportunity. Partner agency and worksite registration, an online system that makes it easy for young people and employers to actually access and navigate. Payroll processing, continuous automated solutions where youth will be paid via debit cards to minimize their ability and willingness and need to go to check cashing places and things of that nature. Student record management, predictive analytics to help match youth to appropriate work sites, and also strategic alignment, which is connection to other youth-serving systems. So as we tackle the youth employment aspect of our work, these are the 3 pillars that we will focus on within youth employment. Strengthen employer capacity, focus on career readiness and exposure, and support system building efforts. As in youth development, which we'll talk about later today, we believe that conditions are right to capitalize on the groundwork that has been laid and galvanize stakeholders to support the development of a comprehensive youth employment system that includes public and private partnerships, target support for underserved population, streamlining and connecting of systems, alignment with local regional workforce planning, and sustainability throughout dedicated funding. So you'll hear us talk about in the equity webinar securing public dedicated funding to support these types of initiatives, and we believe that it's vitally important in youth employment just like it is in youth development.
Now we'll turn it over to Patty Hinojosa to cover financial empowerment.
Hi all. So Detroit is full steam ahead in its recovery from the 2013 bankruptcy. A diverse number of industries have emerged, and the subsequent opportunities they bring have increased the number and variety of skilled career opportunities present in the city. Detroiters are also known to hustle harder than others. Paired with the Detroit versus everyone mentality, the sons and daughters of this city have historically leaned towards identifying multiple streams of income to assist their realization of economic self-sufficiency. A unique opportunity exists to impact the economic future of Detroiters with a focus on the equitable distribution of career opportunities. By leveraging the Foundation's civic leadership and existing efforts, and targeting grant-making efforts aimed at improving the skill sets and requisite thought processes needed for the economic self-sufficiency, our belief is the resilience of the city's youth and residents will pave a way where all Detroit residents will play a meaningful role in the sustained growth of our city. And we believe that through the two focuses you see on your screen, through youth entrepreneurship and financial literacy for youth and families. Genuine opportunity for youth is undergirded by their ability to be active participants in their family, their community, and in the overall recovery of the city. Financial empowerment is critical as it builds agency in the individual and promotes community connectivity. The Foundation will approach this strategy as an opportunity to identify the best interventions that are proven to have impact on removing barriers for youth in their journey towards financial sustainability. We'll work with existing tables and systems to ensure that requisite skills and mindsets for self-sustainability and tools for financial success are being delivered to youth, and we'll assess current gaps within the entrepreneurship support pipelines of this work where the Foundation can have immediate impact. The Foundation will address the above through a targeted approach within youth entrepreneurship. This strategy has a natural connection points within the broader initiative as it provides an additional pathway for youth to connect to the economy. Through the exploration of what youth entrepreneurship can be within the city, the Foundation will explore best practices and how that work can be implemented within Detroit, specifically targeting youth. In determining how to best build youth entrepreneurship within the city, youth can have additional pathways that can provide opportunities for them to develop the 21st century skills needed to connect to the economy while also becoming youth leaders in the city's recovery through their own financial enterprises. In this, we will look to support So we will be supporting targeted youth entrepreneurship programs. We'll be looking to improve joint learning efforts with other philanthropic organizations focused on youth entrepreneurship, and we will work to connect youth to experiential platforms in school and out of school that will enable them to set healthy life and financial goals. And now I will turn it back over to David.
Thank you, Patty. As you all have been listening, I know one of the big questions that I'm assuming has been ringing in your head is what will we fund in this space? Our 2018 investment outlook looks like this: meaningful high school graduation, post-secondary access and supports, re-engaging that 24,000 number of opportunity youth, career readiness and exposure, youth employment system infrastructure, youth entrepreneurship and financial literacy. So what does that look like? In the college and career pathway space, we will look to support efforts that increase the rates of meaningful high school graduation. We will look to support efforts that connect and align stakeholders. We'll also support post-secondary access and supports, making sure that young people not only have a successful high school graduation, but also have the support needed following high school. And we will support efforts that re-engage youth who are not currently connected to school or work. In the youth employment realm, we'll look to make strategic and intentional investments that align efforts connecting this work to youth-serving systems. So in the youth employment work, how do we also connect it to youth development? How do we speak to the continuum of what young people are learning in school, and how does that connect to the summertime and also a job experience? How can we increase work readiness and career exposure? We will fund those efforts. In the holistic development, and as Patty mentioned, from a financial empowerment standpoint, we'll do a lot of learning here, but we will also look to support youth entrepreneurship programs, joint learning efforts with other foundations, and experiential platforms for in-school and out-of-school learning that allow the youth to set healthy life and financial goals. This work, I do want to mention before we pause for Q&A, will not happen in isolation. So as you see the foundation's work in education, and you'll hear about the foundation's work in equity, all of our efforts are designed to coalesce, if you will, to create the type of opportunity agenda that we believe young people in Detroit need, but not only need, that they deserve. And we'll do this in collaboration with other funders and partners like yourself. January 2018, stay close to the foundation. At that particular point, we will be rolling out brand new grant-making guidelines, and you'll have additional information on how to apply for funding between now and then, be sure to connect with us individually on the program team, and we'll be able to make sure that you're ready for when that period opens.
So in addition to the framework that David had articulated, we've also identified a set of community initiatives, platforms that we have, some of which we've been engaged in going back a number of years into our Good Neighborhoods initiatives, and a number that are just more recently launched. And so these community initiatives actually span across our entire opportunity agenda. They have intersections across education, economy, and equity. And you will see some of the themes of the work that we have described here also be leveraged in these initiatives. These are efforts that Skillman is involved in, but with a host of partners. So they are not Skillman-led initiatives, they are Skillman partner initiatives, where we are working with a number of community partners around these efforts. The first, the Cody Rouge project, is a partnership between GM, DTE, Quicken Loans, and the Skillman Foundation to focus intensively in a 16-block footprint in the Cody Rouge neighborhood. And each of the partners is taking on different areas of work in alignment. And the Skillman Foundation and General Motors in particular are working on youth outcomes. So some of the work that we talked about in the education strategy around youth, third grade reading and high school graduation. There's work around housing and the physical footprint, and then obviously workforce development. The key partner around the Cody Rouge project obviously is the Cody Rouge Community Action Alliance, and the work that they've done to actually define their community's vision around some of these efforts that have been articulated, and as partners we are coming in on that work. The second is the Detroit Children's Fund, which is a separate affiliate organization to the foundation. We share some staff and share some overlap in our board membership, but as a separate 501c3, the Detroit Children's Fund was launched recently to focus intensively around school-level investments. They've identified a targeted goal of 25,000 quality seats by 2025, and are really working in partnership with successful schools to help them scale and expand their reach, and to grow their success by investing in talent. So there are a number of deep educator talent initiatives that the Detroit Children's Fund will also lead on. The Coalition for the Future of Detroit Schoolchildren, which many of you have heard of in its first iteration, really played an integral policy role in shifting the landscape around education. A broad coalition of leaders really coming together that resulted in both local reestablishment of local control and financial footing for the district as well. The coalition has relaunched and identified a more targeted focus around actionable priorities for the community. The coalition should be launching its call to action by the end of this year. And finally, My Brother's Keeper, which again has been an initiative that many across the city have played a leadership role in. And that work is resetting, and the leadership team is relaunching around that work later this year, and you will see some of the intersections of the work that Skillman is focused on also represented in that work.
Thank you, Vanita. Now I believe is the time for question and answer. I want to start with one question that came through, and then we can open it up for others. The question was, how do you change systems without direct programming to participants in the system, I believe, programming support to participants in the system, I'm sorry. So I do want to make clear that direct programming support will still exist from the foundation. So I'll say that again, direct programming support will still exist from the foundation. However, it will come in ways that increase access, availability, and scalability for youth. And this is one of the reasons why dedicated public funding, that particular strategy that we'll be working on, is so important. Because though we wish we did, as a foundation, we don't have the resources to meet the needs of the large demand that exists. So securing dedicated dollars will create a pathway for tens of millions of dollars to be available on an annual basis that meet the needs of organizations such as yours. So we will provide programming support to institutions that increase access, availability, and scalability. And while at the same time, we will be pursuing a pathway toward dedicated public funding that will create tens of millions of resources available on an annual basis.
So we're at that time for a question and answer. I have gotten a few questions, and we'll posit them to the team that's here. But if you have a question that you'd like to ask at this time, please type it in, and we will share it with the group to get some answers. A question came in, David, about the data sharing between entities as we think about a strategic plan. Can you talk about how the foundation is planning to get all the entities to agree on data usage?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, and I think it starts and it marries with the system building approach that we're hoping to take. So the first piece is understanding what all systems in the community are currently aligned around meeting the needs of kids and getting them to talk to each other. So it could be something as simple as making sure the school district in and of itself has a clear sense of the out-of-school time programs that exist. So we will look to make significant investments in data platforms that the entire city can capture, so we can properly track young people. This is increasingly important in the education space when you think of college and career pathways, when you think of the Detroit Promise, when you think of all of these efforts that are designed to provide support for children. How can we make sure that data is being shared so they know what's actually happening? And you'll see a bubble up again in youth employment because the data sharing can inform the future as well. So a part of it is just understanding where kids are and what supports they've received. Another aspect of it is what experiences do they have so we can place them in a proper employment opportunities as well.
Terrific, thanks. Another question came in, might there be opportunities for organizations that specialize in post-secondary access and support to partner with those specializing in opportunity youth and re-engagement?
Sure. Hi, this is Kumar. Absolutely, right? We realize that three strategic approaches, college and career pathways, youth employment, and youth development, are all interconnected, right? So creating a mechanism where all of those folks are able to partner together and create the space for that is definitely of interest and on our mind.
Great.
Yeah, the other thing that I'll add to that is where I know partners such as yourself can be helpful is also identifying those young people and understanding where they are and where they're operating. So that's good information for us to have so we can use that to inform our investments in the future as well.
We'll wait for a few more questions.
Well, we can proceed through the slides, and if we get any more questions, before we wrap up, we'll try to answer them live. If we're not able to see the question come in before we end the call, we'll make sure that you are replied to. As mentioned, we have a awesome program team here that's been developing the strategy with partners and other thought leaders locally and nationally. Thanks again to all those on the call that have helped us think through our economy strategy as well as our equity and education. For all contact information, as you can see, you can go to the website skillman.org and find people's contact information. Staying updated with the foundation, we try to make it easy by giving you a number of different ways. One of the things that you can do is we send out a newsletter about every 4 to 6 weeks that gives an update on the latest things happening at the foundation and, more importantly, the work of our partners. Also do similar things on the Facebook and Twitter and Instagram pages, highlighting the work that's going on in the community and sharing some of the stories of the wonderful things that youth have going on. We are developing a new website that will be launching in the next month or so, where you'll see more of our education, equity, and economy frame lifted up. And as David mentioned, grant application information will be posted in early 2018 in January. One question that we've gotten is, will this be made available after the call? We've been recording today's webinar, It will be emailed out to you through the GoToWebinar platform tomorrow. So you'll receive an email link to this recording. If you miss it for any reason, we're also going to be posting this on our website early next week at skillman.org. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. We have one more question before I give one more piece of info. What is this, Terry?
So, hello, everybody. Terry Whitfield. Question was asked. Health has been mentioned yesterday and today as an issue which impacts attendance and success in education. Will health be included in Skillman's work? So as a function of the work in chronic absence, health has been identified as a major contributor to the deficits that young people face here in Detroit. So it is embedded within that work, and in the past, the foundation has funded efforts in vision and other efforts around and asthma to help improve those outcomes for youth. So again, stay tuned to updates within the chronic absence work, and we look forward to working with those in that space.
We had one additional question come in asking about how the foundation is looking to take more risks with funding, especially with new and budding initiatives or organizations. Will there be grants made to support infrastructure building in terms of data and research capacity?
So yes, I'll take that question in two parts, if you will. So the aspect about the new and budding initiatives, that is definitely something that we have taken an interest in, and if you've been following the foundation, you likely saw it seeded in our work last year and continuing into this year with the My Brother's Keeper Innovation Challenge. That was an opportunity where we took a national frame, embedded it in the foundation, and literally wrote out a request for ideas on how individuals and institutions could actually change life outcomes on behalf of boys of color. What was unique about that particular project and process was that as your ideas came in, the ideas could not come in isolation of young people. So as ideas were submitted, you had to include the voice of a young person to start. We received nearly 500 ideas to improve life outcomes for boys and young men of color. When we whittled that number down to 100, we engaged community residents and community leaders and unusual suspects and unlikely allies because we didn't want to make the decision internally. We engaged community partners to help us read through those ideas and those applications. That 100 got narrowed down to 20, and as much as I love the current partners that we have, I'm proud to say that the 20 who made it to the final stage were not current grantees of the foundation. They were new, emerging, exciting organizations and institutions that weren't currently receiving Skillman dollars, and it created a platform, if you will, as Kumar we'll talk about on our equity webinar. It created a platform in a way for us to identify and also support new budding initiatives and ideas. So we will continue that particular approach in the sense of making sure that we scale the entire city and make investments strategically aligned with the opportunity agenda and trying to source the best and the brightest, not necessarily the biggest, but the best and the brightest institutions to help us drive change.